All right, let's talk about your gear a little bit. Let's talk about.
Sure.
We'll start with the board. Tell me the.
With this little thing?
Yeah, this little thing.
Well, this is a 1988 vintage SSL 6000E. And we purchased it in 1999, and I've had it for about 18 plus years. And if anybody knows anything about SSLs, it's just a dream console to work on, especially to mix on. It's probably the most sought after surface for mixing. And of course, this is even available in a plug-in format. You've got, you can get this EQ in the dynamic section and the center bus compressor.
Mm-hmm.
But
you can't get this. You can't get the spoon.
Yes, that is the ice cream, the famous ice cream spoon that we've probably had for 20 years, and I cannot tell you how many people have tried to clean that up.
I bet they're like, my God, no.
Every time it happens, like everybody else in the room knows it's not real, but there's one person that thinks it's real. They don't say anything. They go get paper towels and come back in. And then it's really funny, but I feel bad because they were trying to help me. But it's really good for a laugh.
That's cool.
But yeah, so it is a great console to work on. It's a 56 frame, but I've got 4 stereo modules, so technically there's 60 channels. And it's also, SSLs are inline consoles like a lot of consoles are. So mixed down, there's actually 120 inputs, which you're never probably going to need quite that many, but it's always great to have more inputs than not enough inputs, because you can automate all your effects sends, you can automate all your effects returns, and it really makes it awesome to be able to do all that.
It's 3 bus out. And
the 6000s, the 4000 was their main music console, which has what they call kind of a quad bus. But most people that use them as just a one stereo out. Then they had their film console, which was the 8000. Well, the 6000 was like a merging of the film console and the music console. And because of that, you've got 3 mix buses that are available, which has ended up being one of the more popular consoles now, because how everybody likes to do like a drum bus compressor and maybe a vocal bus. Anyway, it gives you 3 mix buses to be able to really do some creative things, and also because of that, it'll do 5.1.
Right.
If we're not set up for that, but if you wanted to do 5.1 on this console, you can. But it's just a great sounding console. This one has the plasma meters,
yeah,
which do a lot of cool tricks. It's also available with all VUs, but this particular one had the plasmas.
So you've added focals?
Yeah, these are the focal, the twin Bs, not focal. It's a French company.
Focal,
it's French, so it's right. The emphasis
that was
on
new
the end of the word.
Since last year? Or did you have those last year?
Did not have those when you were in last year. We've always had the big soffit mounted JBLs and the NS10s, and I really wanted, what I wanted was a more modern near field, and to have a choice instead of the NS10. The NS10s, people have a love-hate relationship with them.
Sure.
People either love them or people hate them.
Just for translation.
And they really just do what they do. It's a reference speaker. I don't know that it was ever meant to be like your main speakers to mix on. It's just to sort of check it and make sure in the outside world everything's going to sound good. But they became such an iconic speaker. I mean, when you're in a studio, you want to see that white cone.
Right.
But anyway, the focals just give us another choice. It's a much more broadband, more accurate speaker than the NS10. And I have other engineers that work in here, and I had several guys they were bringing their own monitors with them.
Right.
But since I've had the focals, nobody has done that, because they're like, okay, those are awesome.
That works.
But I'm also really proud of these JBLs. These are the 4430s, which came out probably in about 1982, 83. And I actually built these speakers. These are not from JBL. They look exactly like what you get from JBL, but they're custom built from the ground up with all JBL components. Me and a friend of mine, we built the crossover, we wound the coils, built the cabinets, had a cabinet builder, a friend of mine built the cabinets, and they are a one-of-a-kind set of speakers, and I've never mixed anything on them that you couldn't take somewhere else and listen to, and it still sounded good top to bottom. And those suckers, the thing is with the 3 different sets, if you want loud, these will do it. These will take 600 watts continuous and peaks of a kilowatt, so they will run you out of here if you want, if you like it that way.
Right.
Then the Focals give you a much more accurate near field speaker. And then you've got the NS10s if you want them, and the SSL has 3-way monitoring, so it's really nice.
That's
you
cool.
can just
Switch
push
between
of a
them.
button. You can, and you would never want to mix constantly going between the 3 speakers, but it's nice to be able to reference and check it, check what you're doing.
Sure. So on Pro Tools now, where are you at with Pro Tools?
We're version 12.8.
Okay, so pretty far
And I'm quite sure that's not the latest version. Because you cannot keep up with it.
Right.
It is just endless trying to keep up with that. But we're running 12.8 and running a Mac Pro Tower. I think it's a 12 core.
And your converters, we'll get into that in the rack, but just say what they are.
We years ago bought the Antelope Orion 32 converters. At the time they came out, we were ready to upgrade the converters we had and get more ins and outs, and read all the reviews on them, and for the price it just seemed like the best purchase that we could make, and I've never had one person complain about what they sound like. I think they sound great.
So let's talk about your tape machine.
Yes.
Your controller, but your machine back here.
Yeah, this is the allocator. It's a JH24, and we actually have a machine room
Back in there.
that it resides in, the machine resides in, so that, because it makes a little noise, machine running, and we built the machine room just in an effort to, just to keep it quiet. And, and we also have a rack of 24 channels of Dolby SR. So if you like the noise, we can turn it off. You'll have a little bit of noise there, which makes it definitely gives it the vintage feel.
Wasn't there that there's a whole thing about the Dolby?
Yeah, but with the SR on, it is like specs out almost like going into Pro Tools. I mean, there is zero noise.
Wow.
It's just totally clean. So.
Wow. Okay. Come around here. Let's look at this rack. Let's walk through each piece of gear and. So you got the warm audio.
Yes, that is their Pultec clones, and I always wanted some passive EQs, some passive tube EQs, and just had never bought any Pultecs when those came out.
And you still on your stereo bus? Or you patch them on your stereo or on?
Well, I'll use them for different things, but I love the way they sound because I master probably about 90% of what I record. I will use them. I will go through them with the final mix. I love just the little added warmth and just the way these sound is just completely different than a normal EQ. It just adds a smoothness and warmness, and I just like what they do.
Right.
So I don't always. It can depend on the style of music, but probably most of the time, the final mix is printing through those.
Okay. And the master link you still have?
Still have a master link. That's from back in the day.
Yeah, I remember.
Decades ago, this was my chain. The finalizer, the TC Electronic finalizer, everything would hit that for overall compression and some overall EQ. And then it would go digitally right into that. And then you'd put it all together and you'd burn the client their final CD, and that's what would go off for duplication.
Of course, your Antelope converters here.
Yep.
And then your 480.
480L, that's the brain. That's where all the the cards are, and the remote as most people know. You've got the little gray remote sitting on the console. And the beauty of that is you can, most reverbs, if they're in the rack, you're reaching back to make adjustments, and now you're not in the sweet spot per se. With this, you can just pick this up and sit right here and really hear what you're doing.
Right. All the time.
So it's my main effects processor.
So then you got some TC, of course, some Lexicon, some PC.
Yeah, I love the D2, the TC Electronic D2 does great, all type of delays and choruses. I wish I had a few more of them. They're really not that expensive, and then I just don't think anybody does reverb better than Lexicon. That's just my that's my feeling on it. So I've got a PCM 91, back in the day, PCM 70, which actually is my go-to for a lot of things. That if the 480L is tied up on stuff, it's amazing. I will use this more than I will use that. It's just something about the way it sounds. Then the MPX 500 is a much newer one that's mainly used for delays and stuff.
So how it Eventide?
You know, there is nothing like the Eventide H3000s, those ultra harmonizers. It does things. There's some effects in that thing that I've just never heard. Out of my favorite one, for some reason it's not loaded on that, is 4. It's a preset. It's called Rich Rhythm. It's referred to as the world's greatest guitar effect.
Right, is that the one that's detuned?
It's not. It's about 100 multi-tap delays, panned from left to right, all with different feedback values, and each one of them are tuned a little different. It's amazing what that does to really a lot. Probably every mix that I do that is on the mix somewhere there'll be a little bit of that.
That's cool.
It's amazing. There's only like 500 programs in that thing, and it just stays.
Right.
It just stays on that one program. There's a few more, but mainly that one. Yeah.
SPX 900 still.
Yeah, an old SPX 900. And then below that, the first piece of outboard gear I ever bought is a Yamaha analog delay, an E1010. And it started having some issues. I really need to pull it out of the rack and get it serviced, but it does some wild sounding things.
Of course, the distressor, everybody loves those.
Yes, the Swiss Army knife of compression.
So what do you use distressor on?
Probably, when I'm tracking, I'll use them on different things, just depending on what I might need. But usually in the mix, most of the time, this will be on the kick, this will be on the snare.
Okay.
I just really love what they do. And sometimes I'll still be using a little there'll be a little bit of the SSL compression regardless, because of the life that it just, and the excitement that those breathe into everything. But there's, I really like what these distressors do as well. So, but then again, it just depends on the song. Depends on the song, depends on the style of music.
So you're using a 1176 still, or are you just using distressor?
I use all those.
All that.
1176. You can't go wrong with it. It just, anything that goes through it sounds better.
LA2A.
Same thing with the LA2A. This 1176 has got a brighter, more in-your-face sound. The LA2A is, it's got a lot of color. It's going to warm things up.
What about the 160?
I love the 160s on guitars. Those are the original VUs.
I was gonna say,
and they're pretty.
Look at the vintage.
They're pretty fast.
160.
You can get, when you think of an LA2A, this is what I consider very friendly EQ. These, when it's compressing, it's compressing.
Right.
But when you want that, there's nothing like them, especially on electric guitars and rock. And sometimes on vocals, if you just want a vocal to really just sit up in the mix and not move,
160.
Man, those will do it.
I use some on my live mix. I love it.
And then below those are two of the newer versions with the Over Easy added to it. And there again, just as outboard gear, I'm using different compressors on different things, just depending on what I need.
Right. On the pre, starting with Focusrite.
The very first one is one of the Producer Pack series, the 428. And as you'll see, I've got we do a lot of Focusrite here at Bass Brothers. I've got 3 actual Focusrite mic pre's, but this one is really different. The reds are just amazing sounding. But and it was the original. This is like right out of the Focusrite console.
Right.
And they really sound amazing. I've got the version that has the compressor as well. But moving back up to these guys, this is the same preamp that's in here, but this is a much more modern version. And the thing I love about these, because it's really a completely different animal than this, you can change the impedance on the mic. Several different, and that can really, it can sound like a completely different mic pre because of what it'll do to the microphone. So these are very versatile. Plus they have line inputs. They have inserts on them if you want to run them with an insert. You also have instrument inputs on the front.
Yeah, that's cool.
So very versatile.
The Vintech stuff you use on drums?
Well, I do when I'm tracking. Usually kick and snare. I love the the Neve EQ that's on them. You just can't go wrong with that. And I love just going ahead and printing that, so it's just there, just built into the sound. But like further down the chain, if we're doing vocals, a lot of times I'll use one of those on lead vocals. But it's just, to me, the song, the singer, their voice is really going to dictate what you're going to use. You just can't, okay, I'm going to use this chain, this signal path every single time. You know, that's the great thing. And that's the great thing about having, it's like different colors in the palette. Right, sure. For a painter. Sure. It gives it so much more depth. Your recording's more depth and more character, combining all this stuff. Right. Instead of just having one mic pre. Right. And that's what's on everything. Right. Used to be, like in the old days, you didn't have the hybrid approach, which is, I mean, what do you think of the hybrid? Having these many options, this kind of mixing between the different types of classic console sounds. That's what I prefer. I mean, yeah, you used to be, you get the Focusrite console, you had the Focusrite console, you didn't have... True. You might have some outboard stuff or sidecars or whatever, but it was more focused around that particular console sound or whatever. But now, I'm not saying you couldn't get great results, but I'm just saying it's just nice now to be able to have choices. Do the hybrid thing and have some different choices on things, but they're we need to backtrack a little bit back up there, but we'll finish. I want to show you these guys right here. This is a very unsuspecting mic pre here. You would look at this and really not think much about it. It's just a little black box with some switches and some blue knobs. But there's a guy named Carl Johnson out in California that builds this, and it's almost like API on steroids. Okay. There are custom Jensen input and output transformers. It's like the rails are like 30 volts. I mean, you would have to probably crank it all the way up to tons of headroom, and they sound, to me, they almost sound better. But it's an API, but like a custom built 312 or 512. And I love them. I actually bought that from him years ago. He doesn't make this one anymore. I wish I'd bought 3 or 4 at the time. The magic box, huh? But then back over here, these right here. I've got a lunch box, and you'll see that the Troll, does prefer the the 512Cs. That's where he lives. He lives in there. But that's 2 512Cs, to have the actual API pair of those. And you got this guy, what is that? And then it's a local guy named Mike Keith with a company called JMK Audio. And that preamp is really a one-of-a-kind thing. This is one of the first ones. This is almost like a prototype that he built. He sells this now in a rack version that's got like 2 of them. But I'll tell you, that thing has got loads of tone and color to it. And if you want a really fat sounding mic pre, I mean, it sounds great. It's all discrete, all Class A electronics, and it sounds great. It's definitely got a lot of color. Yeah. But if that's what you want. What are you looking at? I mean, you're saying like Neve color? Or? It's kind of its own thing. Okay. It's kind of its own thing. So it's just thick. Yeah, and it's a very forward sounding mic pre, kind of like a API, really in your face, but it's real thick. But if that's what you want, man, it's perfect. What's with the Multitron phase? Man, how can you not have a Mutron phaser from back in the 70s? I know. We're old guys, and we've got gear that dates back to the 70s. So hey, we get it out, and I'll run stuff through it, and just vocal or whatever, and cool. You can come up with some really cool tones. Well, let's go out in your live room, check that out. All right, see what we can see. Watch your step. Watch your step. Well, the studio is comprised of 3 rooms. We've got 2 ISOs, and then we've got the main room. This is sort of our piano room. We've got a Yamaha G3. It's a 6-foot Grand, and it sounds great. Everybody that plays it loves the way it sounds, and so it typically remains in here. But there's some sessions it's easy to take those glass doors out, and we can roll it into the main room if we need it in there. So, but for the most part, it resides in here. So if we're tracking a live band and we want the piano, we've got some isolation for it.
What's that ancient piece you got there?
Well,
I remember these guys.
This also proves how old we are. This is a Yamaha KX88 controller from back in the day. And it's a weighted action controller, you know.
Yeah, I remember. It feels just about like one of my motif feels like.
Yeah.
So.
And,
Feels the same.
you know, there's no sounds in it. It just, you hook it up to the computer and
That was the thing though for
Fire
a
up an
lot of
instrument.
guys was to carry that and some MIDI gear.
yeah. And then the live room, we've it's a good size room. It's about 30 by 25 or something like that. It's believe it or not, we track big bands in here. We've had 25-piece big bands in here that we track, and as long as everything gets situated just right, there's enough room. But sounds great. We've got the hardwood floors, no parallel walls, a little bit of diffusion up, and some absorptive panels. The room sounds great. I'm only, for the most part, if we're tracking a band, if we're really focusing on the drums first, I'm tracking drums in here.
We went right here before when we were here.
Yeah, pretty much here looking that way, so then I can do some different
Do you
perspectives.
think it sounds better over here or in the booth?
I like tracking drums in here if I can.
Just for more space.
Because I've got more room to work with and can have more options, because I like close micing the kit. I like some room mics, a little distance just in this room. And in a minute we'll go in this room, and I actually, if nobody's in that room, I use that back ISO 2 as a chamber. Because that room is designed completely different than either of these two rooms, and it's a whole different acoustic space.
Right.
And we kind of did that on purpose when we built it, so that we can. I'll put a mic in there, and record it. Right. And if you start to push that up into the drum mix, it will make this room sound 3 times as big as it is.
That's cool. So this was always here. Was always part of your build.
Yeah. This is our ISO 2, and we've got glass doors, so we can actually open these up and make it part of the room, if we need to, just for more space. But then we can close the doors, and sometimes a singer's in here, or guitar amps, just depending on how much we're trying to track at the same time.
I was in here when we recorded here. I was ISO'd
Were you really?
Yeah, we had the drums out here.
That's right.
And I was ISO'd in here.
But there's one video I saw where I think the drummer is in here, but
but
you've recorded here so many times. I'm sure you.
Yeah, we have drums in here in our first recordings I did with you in here in ISO, and then when I was here, we had the drum kit out here. I was in here recording rhythm tracks.
But when you walk in here, you can hear how different this room sounds. Because of the higher ceiling.
Right.
It's a hard ceiling. It's the angles of the walls, and it almost.
Why it's good for a chamber.
It probably has twice the decay time than the live room has.
I can hear that.
So it's really gives us a nice a whole different space. If we want something different sound. And sometimes years ago, I used to, even when I'm mixing down, I would have a speaker in here with 2 mics and actually use it as an echo chamber. A live chamber when we're mixing.
And of course, this ancient piece.
Yeah, earlier when we were doing the first video, this is just a Ramza mixer that we used to use as a sidecar to our
back in the early days
12-track system. We just still have it. I don't know how it's sitting on top of the Leslie speaker.
Would you get rid of the Akira somewhere?
It's just that thing bit the dust, and we sold it. It didn't work, and somebody paid like $100 for it on eBay.
They just wanted to see if they could get it to work again.
But something we hadn't talked about was the instruments we have. As you see here, we have a Hammond organ, the real deal. This is a C3. It's basically it's the exact same as a B. It's just a different cabinet. But it's then with the Leslie speaker. And G and I are both bass players and guitar players, so we've got about 6
Yeah, nice
6-7
DRV.
basses here
That's a
that
beauty.
are available. That's a 6-string Yamaha, and you know we've got a lot of guitars here, and we've got amps.
Beauty.
That's a boogie amp from about 1985. The Kurt Granger just recently completely went through it,
Worked it out.
and man, that thing sounds great.
Cool.
Lots of tubes in there.
Kurt was my first guest.
That's right.
He
It
was
sure was.
he was
He lives just right down the road, you know, here in Hueytown.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Yeah.
And did a great job in that. But yeah, so we've you know with the piano, we've got an actual Rhodes.
Right.
This isn't a Fender Rhodes. This is a Rhodes.
Okay.
This is pre-Fender, so it's really the real deal. It's the suitcase model, which is really the one you want, with the speakers built into
That's cool.
it. So, and what's wild is we discovered from looking inside and finding the dates, that's a 1963 model, and our Hammond is a 1963
Really?
model.
Wow.
How that happened, I have no idea.
That's crazy.
But
That's crazy.
and this, you wouldn't really know what's in that, but I found that a Craftsman tool chest makes the best mic cabinet
That's what everybody
that
said.
you could ever have. So if we want to just look at some of the mics, because for years they were in a cabinet in this ISO and here, and I was always having to travel back and forth. Like, man, what can I get that's portable,
Yeah.
where the mics can be where I am? Because
Yeah.
this thing rolls around. You can just roll it right over where you are, and you've got all your mics, your cables. So this first drawer's got a lot of small
Oh, there you go.
diaphragm stuff.
Pretty.
A lot of 57s, 74s. That's an old Rode mic that I actually don't have a cable for. But I've got some older stuff in here, which I really like. These are the 451s.
Mm-hmm.
These are the EBs, which is the Eric Bates edition, of course.
This ancient
And
relic.
yeah, that's one of the 58s. I mean, the 57s that didn't make the cut. You know, they would put those out. And
Did you see that video that Warren Hewitt put up of the Van Halen sessions they did?
yes,
Where he used the kicks were those old, I don't know if they're 57. There was
Yeah.
some early version of something.
but and this is a really old mic. This is a Norelco C62.
Like the
This is actually pre-AKG. This turned into, this is basically a 451, but it's got a little tube in it. It's got a new Vista tube. And it's got a multi-pin connector instead of a standard XLR. It has to have its own separate power supply, and this thing sounds
they
amazing.
still have the power supply.
Oh yeah. Oh, I use this thing all the time. It sounds amazing. A couple of K184s, and I've really liked these on drum. And I tried out these EV. It's their kick mic, which I really love on kick, and I found that they really sound good on tom. So
We used those last time.
I really like those
I
on
agree with you.
tom. But
They sounded great.
We've got a lot of choices, and if other engineers are in here, it usually gives them what they want. This drawer is more large diaphragm condenser stuff. Some U87s, 414s, C12 VR, and just various. A couple of ribbon mics. Really like these Cascades. They're inexpensive, but they sound great.
I had actually recently tried a blue mic, and I actually mixed a little bit of things. Somebody sent me they wanted me to do a little quick thing for them, and I was, wow.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, an SM7B, people love that mic now. It's very popular, and it really does. It sounds great, especially with rock vocals. And
the ATs you have there on the end, what are those? The ATs you have on the Audio Technicas on the end there?
yeah, I think these are the 4030s. That's the 4033, and
I think Jimmy uses
those sound great too.
Jimmy Nutt.
And yeah, so this Craftsman tool chest, I put a little piece of tape over the Craftsman just so you know. And then it's really good because you can have all your
shock
clips,
mounts.
and the bottom you got all your mic cables, extension cords, different things, and I just it's a great thing to have. And you've got a little counter space here on top.
Right,
too.
put stuff on it.
This
Yeah.
is awesome too.
I've heard that. For the 7B, right?
With the 7B, the ribbon mics
Right.
really pumps those
Get
up.
the gain right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So your Avalon 3 we use for bass.
I use it for bass. Use it for sometimes, even if I'm tracking an acoustic guitar, I'll always mic it and usually go with that. But if it's got a line out or an internal mic on the acoustic, I'll still go ahead and print it just to have it.
Mm-hmm.
So I use it for that, but use that on bass a lot.
Cool. Yeah, it sounded great. It was amazing sound.
Oh, and the sub kick
Yeah, Yamaha sub kick.
is over there in the corner, which use that a lot on. Use that on the kick drum. I guess that's all I've ever used.
Now, one of the things that is cool that you guys have done is the power play.
Yeah, we, monitoring now is such a crucial thing, and when you're playing, you really need to hear what you're doing.
Yeah,
if you can't hear what you're doing, it's going to affect how you play. So,
but you're one of the first people that I've seen go into the Cat 5 on the power play. Like everybody used to use, and you did, the Mackies. The little Mackie mixers.
We had,
you did that too,
what we did in about 1999, we bought the Furman system that gave you 4 mono channels and a stereo.
That's right, I remember that.
I had that little Mackie mixer was usually for the drums.
That's right.
Because I could, that way if there was click and stuff, I could give him more channels.
Right.
But then, we always wish we had more on the Furmans, and then Furman came out with a 16-channel version, but not long after that, these came out, and we just
they're working fantastic.
Decided so far so good.
I just love that it's so easy to use it with a Cat 5.
Yep.
My guitar rig uses Cat 5 for the switching,
okay.
and I'm so stuck on it. I can't change.
Right.
Because it's no power to the front of the stage. It's all on the Cat 5.
Yeah. And with stuff like this, if you want multi-channel headphone mixing, it beats having to deal with snake cables.
Oh yeah.
You just got that one little connection,
so much
and you are
easier.
done.
And I just and cost effective. Oh my God, these things are a great deal. With you have the little distribution box, right?
Yep.
There's over there.
Right underneath the main mic panel.
Right
so we
here.
can just patch into it.
Patch in there. Wow.
As you can see, we've got most of them just sort of stashed over there.
Right.
We've got enough of those mixers to do a band and to.
I love that idea
have
of
their
having
own
that.
mix.
And it's just a modern way to go. I mean, it's so much better than what we've been dealing with all these years.
Yeah, when we first started, we had just one headphone mix for everybody.
Right.
It was mono.
Here's your mix.
And I did it on the
Deal with
console.
it.
And it was just like, well, we had to come up with something that everybody could live with.
Yeah, the gear, since you were working at the store, it has come so far and gotten so
it's amazing,
incredibly affordable. As far as things like that, just like that little mixer, and having that and having that ability to give everybody so much better.
Even though there's times, that's just this little mixer with very little to it. I have clients that I have to build their headphone mix because
Right.
If you don't know anything about it, even that looks
right.
like
Yeah.
To them, that looks like the SSL.
We were talking about it. It's got bass treble mid.
Yeah.
I'm gonna freak out.
Gosh, there's 3 knobs.
Yeah, it's hard for some people.
But if somebody's having issues like that, we have no problem. We'll just build their headphone mix for them and tweak it for them, make sure they're hearing like they need to. So.
Well, you guys are awesome in full service. Always have been.
Well, we try, and there's always, free coffee.
And what's that? What you always say? This time, do it with feeling.
Yeah, this time with feeling.
With feeling, and then
I have to say that at least once every.
And you say, well, not every session, I'm sure. We'll be rocking with docking.
Rocking with docking, especially when you're here.
That's right. When I'm here, it's all about the docking and Van Halen. When I'm here, that's all I have to do that. Well, man, I really appreciate.